Leo had always loved the uniform, not in a fetishistic way, but because it represented the steadfast, unshakable core of the woman he believed Clara to be. She was the one who enforced the rules, who hunted down the liars and the cheats. She was his anchor. For 3 years, their apartment, overlooking the gray, busy harbor, had been a sanctuary, filled with the scent of Clara's issued synthetic fabrics and Leo's homemade sourdough. He knew her work was stressful. The late nights, the clipped, urgent phone calls, the way her eyes held a shadow of something he couldn't quite grasp. He accepted it as the cost of loving someone so committed to justice. He never once questioned where she was, or why her expenses were sometimes tight, even for a high-ranking detective. Trust in their small world was absolute. The breaking point arrived not with a fight or an argument, but with the deafening crash of a battering ram against his front door. It was 4 a.m. Leo jolted upright in bed, the noise vibrating through the mattress. Before he could call out to Clara, who was supposedly on a night shift, the bedroom door flew inward, splintering the jamb. The air was instantly thick with shouts and the bright, blinding sweep of tactical flashlights. "Police! Hands where we can see them!" Leo, dazed and terrified, raised his hands. He was pulled roughly from the bed. He stammered, asking what was happening, his eyes scanning the aggressive, masked figures. Then he saw her, standing slightly back, managing the chaos with a cool, detached air, was Clara. She was in full uniform, her expression unreadable beneath the harsh overhead light. But her eyes, those familiar, intense brown eyes, were cold, colder than the steel of the cuffs now biting into his wrists. "Clara, what is this?" he managed, his voice a pathetic squeak. "Tell them. It's a mistake." She didn't flinch. She didn't offer a reassuring glance or a single word of comfort. She simply nodded to one of the uniformed officers. "You," he whispered, the realization a blade turning in his gut. "You did this." She finally met his gaze, her lips parting only slightly. "You had to go, Leo," she said, her voice too low for the other officers to hear, utterly devoid of emotion. It was the only way to clear the path. He was dragged out, processed, and shipped to the county holding facility. The world outside the patrol car window blurred into a meaningless tapestry of betrayal. He was charged with distribution, facing years for a crime conceived and executed by the person who had sworn to protect him. In the concrete monotony of the prison wing, time ceased to have meaning. Leo learned quickly to keep his head down, to not ask questions, and to occupy as little space as possible. He was an outsider, a new arrival in a brutal ecosystem. One rainy Tuesday night, after the lights had dimmed and the wing was filled with the low, guttural sounds of sleeping men, the cell door lock hissed open. 2 figures stood silhouetted against the pale corridor light. They were large, faceless men Leo vaguely recognized as associated with the prison's internal economy, the muscle. "Leo, right?" One of them rumbled, stepping inside and kicking the door shut. Leo scrambled back against the cold wall. "What do you want?" "We're here for a message," the second man said, his voice flat. "A message from the outside. Said you were too chatty." Leo knew instantly who the message was from. Clara hadn't just removed him. She was ensuring his silence. The thought was more terrifying than the men now closing in. The betrayal wasn't complete until he was broken. The beating was swift, professional, and devastating. It was designed not to kill but to maim and scar. They focused on his ribs, his kidneys, and his face, areas that would leave him in agonizing pain but wouldn't require external transfer. He tried to fight, but the 2 men moved with a practiced coordination that left him breathless, fetal, and tasting blood. He didn't scream. He only choked, the sound of his own ragged breathing lost beneath the rhythmic thud of fists against flesh and bone. Through the haze of pain, the only image that burned in his mind was Clara's impassive face in the flashlights, the single cold line. "You had to go, Leo." When the men finally left, pulling the door shut with a heavy, final clank, Leo lay in the darkness. He felt the sharp, shallow pulls of his breath, the wet warmth spreading across the thin mattress. He was broken, utterly alone, and buried alive. He realized the horror wasn't the violence itself, but the knowledge that his fate, this cell, this agony, this crushing, absolute end, had been orchestrated by the woman he loved. She hadn't just broken his heart. She had systematically destroyed his life and used the very laws she swore to uphold as her weapon. As the first, faint, gray light of morning filtered through the high, barred window, Leo dragged himself into a sitting position, every movement a fresh spike of fire. He looked at his swollen, unfamiliar hands, and then at the vacant wall. The man who had loved a policewoman, who had trusted in justice and commitment, was dead. All that remained was a prisoner, baptized in the brutal reality of a betrayal far colder and harder than any concrete wall. His new life had begun, and it was defined by her final, calculated act. The only justice left was the slow, burning cinder of hate. He would survive this. He had to.